Yay! Hi, everybody, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Emma Desi. It's wonderful to have you here, and you're in for a treat today. We've got another lovely author interview, and I'm delighted to be introducing Jocelyn Rish to you today.
Hi.
Um, Jocelyn is an award-winning author and filmmaker who loves researching weird and wonderful animals and sharing what she learns. Her first book was the non-fiction picture book Battle of the Butts, which we published in 2021, about 10 animals that do weird things with their butts. Followed by Battle of the Brains, which came out in 2022, which is about 10 animals with mind-blowing brain abilities, which to me sounds actually not just a kid's book, that we could all learn a little bit something here.
I learned a ton.
But Jocelyn also writes middle grade and young adult novels, as well as screenplays for all ages. She lives in South Carolina with her ridiculously adorable dog. So, welcome, Jocelyn. So good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Tell me about your adorable dog. What kind of
Oh,
dog do you have?
her name's Kenzie, and she is mutt mutt mutt. I did the DNA test on her, and I think there was like 17 breeds or something ridiculous. Her biggest breed is pit bull, like so many of the shelter dogs are.
Mhm.
Um, but she actually has her own story. She and her siblings were found in a trash compactor on a construction site when they were only hours old. And luckily, Good Samaritan found them, brought them to a rescue. It's kind of a friend of my sister's who is one of the rescuers, and so that's how I knew the woman who rescued them. And three of the puppies didn't make it. There were six of them, and three of them didn't make it. But I followed my little girl as she grew up, on Facebook pictures and stuff. And so I was like, I have to adopt her. I love this dog so much, just watching her grow up. And so I named her Kinsey because it means my treasure. So she went from someone's trash to my treasure.
Oh,
So
that's beautiful. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that you're adopting your animals as well. It's a really good thing to do. No.
yeah.
So we've heard about Kinsey, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. And I wonder if you'd start off because you've had an interesting creative journey. And I know that you began in filmmaking. So I'd love it if you could just share with us a little bit about that journey, because that's a hard one as well.
Yes. It's been, yeah, my journey's been weird. It's been about 25 years since I first started being serious about writing. And I started off in young adult and like short stories. But then, oh gosh, I guess it's been about 15 years ago now. I lose track. It all runs together, right? But South Carolina has this wonderful program through the Film Commission, and they offer grants. And so you submit screenplays, and if you win, they give you a grant to make the movie. And so my brother he graduated from high school with a degree in journalism and media arts. And so he has always been fascinated with filmmaking. And so he wanted to apply. And so he convinced me to, write a script with him. And I didn't know anything about it. So I bought script books, learn how to even do this thing. And I had a short story that had won a contest called Saying Goodbye. And so we decided to adopt that into the short script because it had to be a short film. That for the grant was a short film. And so we wrote the script from the short story. It won amazingly. And so we won the grant and we made the movie, and it was an amazing journey. That film is called Saying Goodbye, and it's about a cat who lives in a nursing home and can predict when the residents are going to die. And he's based on a real cat. Like, this was a real cat from back then.
Mhm.
Um, and so I made like this fictionalized version of this woman, kind of coming to terms as, the cat's visiting her friends, and then of course her.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so that was a great adventure. And so then a couple years later, we decided to apply again, and we turned another one of my short stories into a script, and we won again.
Mhm.
And so that one was called High Heels and Hoodoo. And it's kind of like a little horror, a little funny. It was very hard to categorize, but so we were filming in a graveyard in the middle of the night, the week before Halloween. So that was an adventure. And then just a couple years ago, we applied. It was a different. It wasn't the Film Commission this time. It was the South Carolina Arts Alliance that had grants, and so we applied with another project we put together, which was an anthology. It's called Grave Intentions, an anthology of chills, thrills, and kills. And it's 5 other filmmakers. We had a contest to have people submit their scary short films. So we picked the best 5, and then we filmed the wraparound. So I wrote the wraparound, and it's the same character, one of the same characters from High Heels and Hoodoo. She is the kind of Rod Serling character who introduces the films. And so yeah, so that came out 3 years ago, I guess, about 3 years ago at Halloween. At Halloween will be 3 years. So that's been my adventures in filmmaking. It's not the Hollywood route per se, but
You're out there doing it. You're making it
yeah,
happen.
yeah, it's very cool. And the very first time we watched Saying Goodbye in the theater and saw my story come to life, I was just sobbing.
I would have been too. Wow. Okay. So I thought that you had started in filmmaking and moved into
Mm,
fiction, but actually you've been doing both in conjunction.
yes, yes, yeah.
Ah, okay. So what got you into the sort of fiction side of it? Because it sounds like you had these short stories all ready to go. But so have you just basically always been writing?
Yeah, I mean, I was not one of those kids who knew I wanted to be a writer. I was never one of those like, oh, I'm going to be a writer when I grow up. But now, when you look back, there were signs. Of course, I was a, huge nerdy reader. Always the girl with her head, face in the book. And then, I had, wrote a little book in what was that, 4th grade. We had to do it for an assignment, but it was a full on, it was supposed to be a couple pages, and mine was quite hardy. And things through high school. So there were signs. But it wasn't until like my mid-20s that I came back around to. I was working in a software company. My degree is actually in computer science and psychology, and I was working in a software company, and I hated it. It was drudgery. And so all day long, I was just imagining these stories in my head, what I'd be doing instead, and taking the book I'd been reading that night and coming up with a different story. And I was kind of like, maybe there's some clues here for me. So, I
So it
started.
sounds like life has kind of been busy as you've been going through that. As you've been writing, you've also been working and making films. And
Mhm.
so this, I asked this of just about all my guests because it's something that a lot of newer writers really do battle with, is that idea of time management and how do you make time for all of that. So for yourself, when you were working, you were filmmaking and you were writing, what kind of worked for you to enable you to do all of those things?
Yeah. I can't say anything actually worked well. I mean, honestly. I'm very much one of those feast or famine writers. I can't dole it out. Like every novel I've written has been written during NaNoWriMo, National Writing, Novel Writing Month. I can't do the 500 words a day or whatever. I'm very much it all comes out in a giant blurb. So, and the filmmaking, I was very lucky that the job I had at the time, they were pretty supportive and let me kind of take some time off at the time. I needed it to do the filming and that kind of thing. So, uh, yeah, I'm not very good at time management, so I really don't have great advice. I'm a procrastinator who procrastinates to the deadline is 2 days away, and then I go boom. So
Ah, okay, no, but because that's interesting in and of itself. I know another
yeah.
writer who's very like that, and maybe people listening, if you did exams at school and you noticed that you were the one who crammed the night before and then did well the next day, then that's maybe a good sign actually that that's the way that your brain works and that's the best way to do it. A friend of mine, she knows that she's got a book to write. She knows she does a lot of ghostwriting, so she knows she's got a deadline coming up. But she'll mull it over, and she'll put it off and put it off. And then she's got 3 months to go. And just like you, that's it. She'll get it all done in 3 months. And that's what works for her. So I think that you're showing us here that this is horses for courses. Everybody has their own way. You just got to find what works for
Yeah,
you.
right. Exactly. Exactly. It's not the best way. It's very stressful, but I've tried doing that. I've tried sitting down, you use a timer and you write for it. And I just sit there and stare at I need that external deadline to push me over the edge. Even if the external deadline is something like, it's not gonna, if I miss the deadline, it doesn't matter, but that energy around it pushes me over the edge. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I'm a book coach, and so one of the best things that I do for my students, for my clients, is giving them that accountability. It's
exactly,
just,
exactly.
yeah, it's amazing the magic that it has in someone on the other side of a Zoom room. So one thing I was keen to talk to you about today was about the journey that you had to finding a publisher. This was something that you sort of mentioned to me, that actually this has been a real um you've been through what we read about when we hear about authors who've been looking for the right deal and the right publisher. So I'd love it because there'll be a lot of people listening who want that traditional deal. And so it'd be just great to hear from you about how that was for you from where you started to when you got that deal.
Yeah. So yeah, again, traveling way back in time. I think even before Saying Goodbye got filmed, so like more than 15 years ago. So I think I touched on it earlier that YA was my thing. I love YA. I love reading it. That's what I wanted to write. So I was writing YA novels. And finally had the one that I was like, okay, I think this is the one. And so I actually submitted it for the SCBWI Work in Progress grant. And
Mhm.
I won that. So then I'm like, okay, I know I have something that's good. And when I got that phone call again, sobbing, tears falling down my face because I knew that was it. I'd won the grant. My fortune was made, right? Yeah, no, not how it works at all. Um, so while the grant money was lovely, I started querying because I felt like I had a strong project. I got lots of requests, got a ton of requests actually, full request, and so this is it. It's kind of and then the rejection started rolling in. I did get one R&R. I got an R&R, and as well another one of those things when you're talking about lessons learned, it didn't sit right in my gut. I was like, but the agent was such a huge agent. I'm like, I will do whatever this agent wants to make this happen. But I just didn't feel it in my soul. But I did it. I did the R&R, sent it back to her like a month later. It was like, thanks, but no thanks. So,
Just to interrupt you, Jocelyn, would you tell our listeners what an R&R is?
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, a revise and resubmit. So that's like the agent liked it, but they didn't love it. And they had this kind of another vision for it. And so they want to see if you can carry out that vision before they will offer you a representation. And I've had friends where an R&R was successful. I have plenty of friends where the R&R was not successful. So
Not a
my advice,
guarantee, but it's like showing that they're interested.
yeah, yeah. And so my advice is always go with your gut. I wish I'd gone with my gut. I knew those wasn't the changes I wanted to make for the book, but I took the months to rewrite it. And,
It's hard though, isn't it? When you're a new writer, it's hard to kind of have that, and you want that deal, especially as you're saying it was a big agent. It's hard to hold steady on that because you've got this goal that you want. So I don't blame you at all. I'm sure many people would do the
yeah,
same.
yeah, it's hard. Yeah. And so then I actually then wrote a middle grade book. And because I kept one of the feedback I kept getting from agents when they passed was that the character felt too young. The
Right.
voice of the character felt too young, but the plot, there was no way it was it was murder. I'm a horror thriller writer in my way world. And so there was lots of murder and horror that I could not have aged her down, the character down. So I'm like, okay, well, apparently I have more of a middle grade voice. So I'll write a middle grade book. Still horror, but it's a softer horror. And so again, I thought I had it and started querying, got a lot of requests and got nowhere. And so then I was getting to the point that I'm like, gee, do I really want to do this?
Mhm.
This isn't what I want to do. And it wasn't indie publishing was just kind of taking off at that point. It wasn't really yet where it was as mainstream as it is now. And so I wasn't sure I wanted to do all that work that I know it takes, that you have to put into it. You basically become a publisher yourself, or you do become a publisher yourself. And I was just, I don't know if I want to do this. And so I don't know if I want to do this, period. And I kind of it was a long lull where, and the movies kept interrupting too. I love doing them, but every time the movie happened, the writing completely stopped. I mean, and so uh it was late one night on Twitter because I'm a night owl, and I was on Twitter because that's my main form of procrastination. So I was scrolling Twitter, doom scrolling Twitter when I should not have been. And I found a meme popped up and it was a picture of a manatee, an adorable manatee, and it said, manatees control their buoyancy through a cycle of continuous farting. That's a thing now. And I was like, no, that cannot possibly be true. I love manatees when I was a kid. I never heard this. Such a fascinating fact. So I Googled it. It was true. It really is true. And in that Googling, it brought up several other really funny facts about animal booties, about the wombats having square poops. And I just sat there, I'm like, huh, I think there's a book here. And I was like, well, I don't write picture books. That's not, I'm YA or middle grade. And, you can't really, it's too young for that. And I was like, ah. And so I kind of played around with some picture book ideas, fiction picture book, because of course I'm a fiction writer. I kept playing around and nothing was right. And I kept thinking, it kept niggling in the back of my mind, I think this has to be nonfiction. I was like, I really don't write nonfiction. Not only do I not write picture books, I definitely don't write nonfiction because I didn't read it. I love facts, but I was never have never been really a nonfiction reader. And so I resisted it for months and months and months and months. I'm like, nope, 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 nope. And finally I'm like, I can't not do it anymore. This is what it has to be. And so I started kind of messing around with it. And then the title came to me, Battle of the Butts. And then I knew as soon as I got the title, I knew it was finally going to happen for me. So I wrote it real fast, it's like I said, because I'm a fast writer. I wrote it just a couple of weeks and I turned around and queried it. I had multiple offers within, a month. And then, so I accepted an offer and then she took it right on submission, no edits, just sent it on submission right away to publishers. And within, I think, a month and a half or 2 months, we had an offer. So it was a
Wow.
and so it was like, I had to
Story.
I had to change, not only my genre, my age group, and my category completely to finally make my dream happen. But
But I think I think that shows a lot of things about who you have to be as an individual and the business of publishing. So first of all, your tenacity to keep going, because we really take it. We have to be tenacious on this and keep going even through all the rejections. And it sounds like what part of what you were doing was taking on board those rejections and the feedback that you were getting and trying to adapt and fit the market or what you could do, what you thought your voice was. And then when that still wasn't kind of working, you were open to inspiration coming and open to what could be. And there you got hit by a battle of the butts, which is just phenomenal. But I think that it shows also, so not only that tenacity, but we have to be adaptable. And even if it's not changing from fiction to non-fiction, so often it's changing genre within fiction as well. I just think you're a really good example of how we do have to be a bit flexible. I'm thinking of another writer called Alessandra Torre, who she's a fiction writer, and her love was thrillers. But she made her name in romance. She had to go down that romance thing first until she established herself, and then she felt confident enough, and people were happy to go with her on this thriller route. And so sometimes it just takes us a little bit of time. And so you carried on, and I can see from your blue screen, your green screen there, that it was a two book deal. Is that right?
Wasn't at the time, actually. It was not a 2 book deal. It was only 1 book deal. But before we even had published Butts, before it came out, they asked if I had any other ideas, and I was like, well, sure, let's head to the other end for Battle of the Brains. Now I have to admit, though, this was from my agent and her agenting partner, because I had Battle of the Tails, Battle of the Tongues, I had all, I mean, honestly, I still want to go down the whole list of body parts. But so she and a colleague were talking about the battle books, and no. Well, I guess they've been talking about the battle books, and then one of them read an article about raccoons learning to pick locks. And they were like, oh, what about Battle of the Brains? And so she sent me that idea. And so I included it. I sent my editor a list of 3 possibilities with some research I had done for all 3. And they took it to acquisitions and decided they wanted to go with brains. And so that's what we did.
And it sounds like, even though you hadn't considered yourself to be that non-fiction writer, I'm just taking from your body language and everything, actually, this has been fun and you've enjoyed it.
Yes. Oh, I love it. It's been, I mean, I just can't even fathom of 20 years ago trying to tell, me that you are going to be the butt lady because you're going to write your first book is going to, and the book that all the kids are going to know is going to be about animal butts, and that you're going to then write more. And I have not only all the battle ideas, but anytime I read a fact now, especially animal facts, because I've loved animals my whole life. But anytime I read an animal fact, I'm like, ooh, how can I make that a kid's book? So it's just constantly bombarded by these ideas. So yeah, it's been so much fun. And then doing the visits with the kids. I haven't done an actual in-person visit yet, but I've done tons of virtual visits, and it's just a blast. And the questions they ask are hilarious, and it's so much fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. And having looked at your website and things as well, I can see that there's a lot of fun and interaction going on there as well. So it's fabulous. And so it's, bringing a love of animals and a love of writing together. That's it. You just don't know what the future is going to bring. You've got to take that next step and just keep going.
Yep.
So thank you so much for sharing that with us, because that's really going to give a lot of people encouragement and motivation and hope that they keep going. They'll find the right fit for them too. So something I'd love to know from you, because most of the people listening here are people who are writing their first book and are dreaming of having that publishing deal. So I'm always curious, for you, what was one of the one or two more surprising or unexpected elements of the publishing process that you perhaps hadn't anticipated, or had you done so much research, actually it was kind of what you expected?
I mean, yes. I mean, I expected a lot of, a lot, because I had, I've been at this for a while. So I had done a lot of blog posts, a lot of tweets, a lot of, conferences. I had a pretty good idea. But two things I think. Well, one, I did not realize how long it took. Like, I knew it took a long time, like, but you don't know till you're in it. And I guess it's probably longer with picture books than it might be with some other books, because of the fact the illustrator has to come on board and do the illustration. So that's a whole
Ah,
nother process.
so talk to us about that then. So you didn't go with your illustrations to the agent.
No, yeah, I can't even draw stick figures. So like kindergartners would laugh at my drawings. And so yeah, I know that if you're doing the traditional route, they handle all of that. They actually don't want you to have preferences, because they have their preferences. And they sent me several portfolios to choose from, or not even choose from, to weigh in on. I didn't get the final choice. And it's a hard decision. This is someone's going to take your baby and make it, pretty. And I was actually at a highlights foundation workshop, and when they sent me, and I was there with a book it's a fiction picture book about surfing dogs, so dogs who surf. And I opened David Crichton Pester is the illustrator. I opened his portfolio, and one of the first pictures was a picture of a dog surfing. I was like, wow, okay, I feel like this
Oh,
is a sign from the universe, even though the book has nothing to do with surfing dogs. The fact that he has surfing dogs in his portfolio while I'm working on another story about surfing dogs. Okay. So yeah, he actually lives in New Zealand. And I never even talked to him the whole process. They keep us separate. It was the very end, he was having trouble finding information on one of the animals. And so they sent a question from him to me, but like it wasn't direct, it was like it went through, the contact, so you just really don't have contact with them. And so he was wondering if I had been able to find any pictures of this animal. It's the beaded lacewing, the one who has the fatal farts. And so he couldn't find any good pictures. I wonder if I had found any so that he could use as a reference. And so I sent him what I had found. And so that was our very first, like, even kind of contact. And it was through an intermediary. But we did, once it was leading up to release, we connected, and we did a joint release, because it was during, of course, the prime COVID time. So that was fun too. And so we did a virtual release, but that was nice because everything had gone virtual, because he's in New Zealand. We never would have been able to do anything anyway. So we did a joint virtual release party, and he did a example of how he drew some of the manatees, and
yay.
yeah, so we got to meet him. So now we follow each other on social media, and we send each other an email every once in a while, like, oh, did you see this? Or, oh, did you see this thing? So he did both books, and he's amazing, and he's hilarious. His illustrations are hilarious, and I just couldn't have been happier with how it turned out.
So that's so interesting. I'm sure a lot of people won't realize that actually the publisher doesn't want you to go with your own illustrations. They want to make that the visual side of that and have the say on that. And fascinating that they didn't want the two of you to connect during the process of doing the book. Do you know why? I wonder why that was.
Well, it's kind of like they don't. I don't really understand it completely, but like they want the illustrator to have their own vision, and they don't want us. So, and then because writers can be very protective too. They'd be like, well, I want, so let's say if it was a fiction story, I want this girl to have red hair and I want her to have blue eyes and I want blah, blah, blah. And the illustrator's like, no, it's going to be brown hair, brown eyes, so they don't want it to be this nitpicky thing. And
Right.
and honestly, had it would been something where they're like, oh, well, get together and talk about it, I would never have come up with the things he came up with. I mean, he was absolutely brilliant. And so if I was trying to push my ideas on him, they would never have been even a smidgen as amazing as what he came up with. So
So that methodology worked in this case.
yeah, I mean, so I can see, I mean, I know some writers get frustrated by it, but it worked very well in this case, and I can see why it works a
Hmm.
lot.
Hmm.
Although I know all of us control freak writers, and it can be frustrating to completely turn your baby over to somebody else and have no say. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's the way it's always been in traditional publishing, and it
Yeah.
mostly seems to work. So
And so one of the other things you mentioned then is that you knew it would take long between submission
oh right, sorry, I got
and
totally
so can you remember kind of how long it was?
from the time I accepted the offer till the time it got published was almost 3 years. It was 2.5 years. And
Wow.
so yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah.
Brains was a lot faster. It was on an accelerated timeline. I had to write it real fast. He had to illustrate really fast. But yeah, for Brains it was almost 3 years from
Okay.
the time of
Yeah,
acceptance.
that's longer than I would have been, especially but now that you've explained it, actually, that the illustrations, I mean, that's going to be such a vital part of it that has to be right. Yeah. Wow. So tell us you've told us a little bit about Battle of the Butts, but tell us about Battle of the Brains and who this might be a good fit for.
Yeah, it's a perfect fit for elementary school kids. I know the UK does it different, the ages or the grades a little different, but so for I think it's like 4 to 8 is what it says on Amazon as the age is 4 to 8.
Right.
But elementary school is like the target audience for it. A little bit into middle school as well, especially boys, who love, uh, but yeah, and I would say Battle of the Brains is a little bit older than Battle of the Butts, because Butts you can get by on just being funny. Well, the Brains it goes into very much the many of the studies and research that has been done, and it doesn't shy away from explaining how and so that's a little dense for the younger crowd. So
Mhm.
probably I think Brains hits more like 6 to 11 a little better, but
Okay.
yeah, and so it's 10 animals, and it's probably most of your usual suspects that you would think of. Dogs, of course, I was putting dogs in there. Dolphins, chimpanzees, but some surprising ones, maybe rats. I don't know if people realize that rats are super smart. The ravens, I think people know ravens are smart. The one that was the biggest surprise to me was the Portia jumping spider. And she's this little spider. I always call her she because it's Portia. So Portia, but I don't, and these spiders are amazing what they can do. It just totally blows my mind what they can do. And I mean, they're only about the size of your thumbnail. And if they were any bigger, they'd take over the world because they are so smart.
Well,
And it's
don't tell us what that is. We'll have to go and buy the book to.
funny. Exactly. And it's funny because I told you earlier that raccoons actually inspired my agent to tell me to use that one, and raccoons didn't make the cut. I
Uh-huh.
was at the very end, and I had one spot left, and I was trying to decide between raccoons, squirrels, and rats. And I decided to go with rats because they are much maligned, people don't have a very good opinion of rats. And so, and
Yeah.
they're all, those smaller little mammals, and they're all kind of clever in the same way. Cause that was another thing I tried to do is by picking animals that are clever in different ways that,
Nice.
and so, and those three kind of overlap. And so I decided to go with the rat because I figured they needed some good PR.
They do indeed. And your books, are they available in libraries in the States?
Yes. Yep. Libraries, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the normal places.
Fantastic. Well, all of the parents and the teachers listening and watching need to go and get that book for their school. That'll be marvelous. Ah, so thank you. So what are you working on now? Are you still doing children's? Have you gone back to your first love, or do you feel that freedom again?
It's funny. I'm all over the place right now. I'm because I am working on another nonfiction book about animals. It's a shocker. And I've been dabbling at that. But my brother and I are working on another movie idea, so we've got that going on. And then I really want to get my YA out there. And that was, we talk about the ups and downs and the different journeys of publishing. And I actually parted ways with my agent last fall. I decided I really wanted to, YA is my first love. I do want to get it out there.
Mhm.
And middle grade too. And she does not represent either. She's very picture book focused. And so I decided, that I needed to, if I was going to make myself move forward instead of being, comfortable and just sit, I needed to part ways. So I did that. It was a hard decision, but I want to get my YA out there. And so I've been circling back and doing some revisions and trying to figure out the key to make some of these things work.
Yeah, I can imagine that is a really hard decision to make, having strived for so long to find that right fit. But I think, again, you're just giving us this wonderful example of that the creative journey, whether it's writing, filmmaking, art, sculpture, whatever, it is a bit of a roller coaster. There are going to be ups, there are going to be downs. But also what's wonderful though about it is that you have that freedom. You're not tied into a big book deal where you can only write what it is the publisher wants you to write. You have that freedom. And I think that's one of the joys of being an indie, particularly, is that you get the freedom to write what you want and publish it when you want and mix genres up if you want to. So you're kind of embracing that side of the indie author whilst at the same time pursuing that traditional deal.
And I think I've got to the point now too. You talk about it, that if I can't, I'm gonna do like one more round with this YA because I still really believe in this one book. I mean, YA in general, but this one book specifically, and I'm ready now. Like if it, I've had the traditional under my belt, I've seen what it's like, and so I have a better handle on what happens to to create a book and get it out there and do the whole thing. And so I would feel comfortable now.
Yeah.
And trying this indie thing. It sounds fun, actually.
It's fun. It is fun. It's a really nice community to be part of. I love it. I love it. So I know as well, though, you very, very kindly have a free gift for our listeners who may be wanting to go that traditional route as well. So I wonder if you would just tell us a little bit about it.
Sure, it's great for indie writers as well. It's a course I have. It's a video course called Practice Makes Pitch Perfect. Because of course we have to be able to pitch our books. And you get there and you're like, someone asks what your book about, and you're like, or you're like, it's about this guy and he does this and he does this and he does, and then you're like, people are like, what? So you need that pitch, that killer elevator pitch that you can pull out. So I have a video course where I walk through this, the elements of a killer elevator pitch. The dogs, all the Rish family dogs, participate in helping with creating the pitches. So it helps maybe you laugh a little bit. And so, so that everyone has that pitch ready to go, whether you use it to pitch on Twitter or social media, whether you use it in your query letter, whether you're, standing in the coffee line and chatting with the person behind you and you're like, oh, I have this book, it's about this, and here's my awesome way to pitch it. So anyway, so it's if they go to my website, jocelynrish.com/PMPPLB, which I know is very weird, but so PMPPLB. So jocelynrish.com/PMPPLB.
Fabulous. Well, I'll be sure to link to that for everybody so they can get to it. Wonderful. That has been such an eye-opening conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Also, thanks for sharing about Battle of the Butts and Battle of the Brains. I think it sounds very amusing, and my son for sure would love it. So where can listeners find out more about you and your books?
I'm Jocelyn Rish everywhere. So my website, jocelynrish.com. I'm Jocelyn Rish on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. I don't know. Those are the best places I mostly am, but usually anytime something new opens up, I grab that handle. So.
Yeah, that's it. An unusual name. So put in Jocelyn Rish and everyone will find you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great fun.
It was so much fun chatting with you.